Hello, everyone. Welcome to EmPower, our journey back. It's never too late to complete your degree. We're so excited to be hosting such a valuable conversation today. My name is Kayla. I'm the Assistant Director for Alumni Diversity Programs and Initiatives. And I just want to echo my team's excitement of how much we wanted to host this program today. We recognize that the reality of students stepping away from UCLA and not returning from anywhere between a few years and several years is more common than we may acknowledge. And it can be a topic that's difficult to discuss, especially when getting accepted to UCLA is such an important event in a student experience as well as their loved ones. The purpose of bringing this together, this group, is to normalize the things that we don't always go according to plan, and that we want to honor the decision to leave UCLA and the decision to return are both difficult ones, and to celebrate everyone has their own journey in higher education, as well as demystifying the process of returning to UCLA by discussing the academic, personal, and professional resources that can aid one's transition back to UCLA in completing one's degree. We hope that this event will encourage anyone who's considering to come back to UCLA, or anyone who is in the process of supporting a loved one who has not yet complete their degree and would like to support them in doing so. We invite you to send any questions that you may have for our panelists to our email, diversity@alumni.ucla.edu. And hopefully at the end, we'll have time to have a Q&A portion and be able to answer some of the questions that might arise during the conversation. And with that, I would like to move to kick us off to introduce our panelists and moderators, beginning with our moderator, Dr. Denise Pacheco, who is our Senior Director of Alumni Diversity Programs and Initiatives. Next, I'm introducing Dr. Latanya Rease Miles, who is our Director of University Partnerships at ReUp Education. Next, we have Vivian Salazar, who's UCLA's Director of Academic Advancement and Program College Counseling. And then we also have Dr. Nicole Presley Green. Here she is, who's UCLA's Senior Director, Executive Director for Student Resilience and Mental Health Resources. Next, we have AR Mateo, who is a volunteer network leader for the Filipino Alumni Association. And last but not least, we have Anthony Padilla, who has a background in residential life here at UCLA and now works as a store leader at Phil's Coffee. Very excited to have you all here. And fun fact, we are all in this room.
I'd like to shift to you, Nicole. You know, as someone who is a scholar and a practitioner, academic success, resilience, positive mental health practice, especially for students of color, BIPOC students. In this very point, you know, you came here as an undergrad. You've seen UCLA transform resources in so many ways, and so I'm curious for you, given your expertise, do you also see trends as to why students are stopping out? If we start there.
Yeah, I mean, certainly, you know, I see the slice of the campus where there is more mental health issues, but I would say from all the experience I've had, you know, to LT's point, it starts like a drip and it ends with a waterfall. You know, it starts with lack of familiarity or underestimating the academic demands, under not really understanding the hidden curriculum. And then the student kind of getting into, I can do this by myself, I can catch up, and not asking for support, and then getting a bit behind, and then self-blame and shame kicks in, and then not knowing where to turn. Who do you tell when you're in academic probation? You're just waiting on that letter to not come, or maybe they won't notice, again, because you're not sure how to navigate the institution. And then not enough support, where, I mean, I haven't seen us as much reach out to folks in academic difficulty in those ways. I think we've got more on campus now than we've ever had. But I see that by the end of it, they're in this waterfall. They've now gotten so far behind. Now they think, you know, I'm gonna try to navigate it by taking extra classes, which causes more tuition issues, which causes financial issues, which now I can't go to work. So it started with this drip and it became a waterfall because they're not able to access the resources, and then they're drowning. and then they're drowning. So that's what I've seen happen. And all in that is, I don't know where to turn. I think everybody's got it but me. We're not normalizing the conversation around UCLA's hard evens for smart people. So it doesn't mean you're not smart, just you can't do it. And so those are how like the mental health issues then show up, the depression, the self-blame, the shame, the high expectations. And I got to get from behind, and they kind of get a little bit in denial, and then they just get overwhelmed. And that's what I've seen typically what happens. And by the time they get to me or to Vivian or somewhere on campus, they're like subject to dismissal, really in academic difficulty, or I don't want to get there, so I'm going to cut it off early, and not thinking they can persist. So those are some of the trends that I've seen.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I think, the second question I had for you, I'm thinking about how it's important to even bring back something LT shared about the reasons people stop out vary. And sometimes they are academic related, like you're sharing, and sometimes they're not. You're reminding me of my first year as an undergrad at UCSD. I did very well academically. I had a 4.0 my first quarter, but I was ready to drop out emotionally because the environment, I didn't see myself. Where do I fit in? I don't belong here. I feel sad. I feel lonely. And so I'm curious, thinking about resources, if you reflect on just the time for you as a professional, not maybe when you're an undergrad, but as a professional, do you think that those resources are evolving and changing as we learn more, as we're more conscious and mindful? I'm thinking about some of the work you're even doing in our mental health services to try to move the needle and change how things are managed. Do you think the resources are getting better, or more culturally relevant, if I could?
Yeah, I do think we're expanding. When I first started, it was like, you have any problem, go to the counseling center. It's your individual problem, and it's something about you. And I think we've done a better job with supporting transfer students, naming identities that you deserve to be here, and calling out those services. We have case managers to manage those crises before they become ones that you can't solve, and then you have to stop out. Things that you're perfectly capable. Maybe your GPA is high, but maybe you're from a country that's kind of imploded and your family is, in a lot of distress. So there's all these reasons people stop out to support others, because some crisis is going on in their lives. A parent or family member is unfortunately very ill or dying. Those kinds of things also happen. And I think we have case managers now that support that. I think we have identity centers that really forefront information and try to break that down, that hidden curriculum in specific ways, because the hidden curriculum is not the same for every community, and the barriers are not the same. So I think that's important. I think we still have a lot to do. I don't know how great a job we're doing collecting holistic data on why and how people are stopping out, how long it takes them to return, what got them to return. I don't know that we're doing that data collection yet, which seems like a big part of the missing puzzle piece here to me. Because I think we all have pockets of the data. Like I have pockets of how many students report that they're in academic difficulty and report a mental health issue, but I don't have the rest of the data super well. So I think that's something that we could move the needle on.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Nicole. I think, again, you're setting it up so well. I appreciate you, because I'd like to transition to you, Vivian, because I think you hold some of the logistical pieces that folks who've joined us today might be curious about. So if I could start with a logistical question, you've been in academic advising counseling for many decades. You've served on committees like our economic crisis response teams that are really trying to intervene and provide the bridge, provide the safety net, ensure we can hold with our students. But I'm curious if someone today is curious how they know they're missing classes, they know they're missing new units, they're nervous to try to come back. What kind of resources exist? Where would you advise a student begin?
I think that, there's a couple places. One is just internally to really think about where they're at internally. Are they ready to receive that information? Where are they at in their lives? Thinking about what their experience was, and are they ready to be in a space that may be triggering for them? But, there are a lot of academic policies and requirements, and the university isn't really set up for students to have competing demands on their lives. It's about, I was at UCLA, and in the 4 years, it wasn't until my last year that I realized that attending the university wasn't about just going to class and taking the exams, and doing your homework. It's a lot more than that. And I understand that, students have real lives, as we talked about before. We've got non-traditional students, we've got formerly incarcerated students, we've got parenting students that have different types of challenges that they're confronting. But the biggest step, I think, is connecting with someone at the university, be it their departmental counselor or be it their college advisor. So every college has an advisor, and just asking the question, what do I have left and how can I come back? But the biggest piece of that is figuring out, where are you at right now and what are you ready to do? If it's coming back part-time, if it's coming back just in the summer to kind of explore things, it's really understanding, I think, probably your why. Why are you returning? What are your reasons? And where are you at personally?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Vivian. I think as you're sharing, I'm thinking about that there are, I think, institutional policies that were designed with a certain student in mind,
Right.
of a certain age, financially, a certain level of stability. And that is where anytime we deviate from that is where we're falling through a crack that sometimes is not being acknowledged exists, whether it's mental health, whether it's one unpaid bill. LT, can we go back and pay that bill? It makes me so sad. I think that's why we tried to create the economic crisis response team, to prevent one bill should not prevent a student from continuing to go to class. That's not okay. So I'm curious, Vivian, you've also been here a long time. You're also were a student here. Do you think that those policies are starting to shift? Are people willing? I'm glad the bill was never paid, LT. Just philosophically, are you seeing shifts and changes in those policies and ability for a student to have more flexibility to align with their needs and help them succeed?
Yes and no. I think, there are definitely policies that create a huge barrier for our students. And I feel like I myself I've been on campus more than 30 years. And a big part of that is being able to advocate and be in spaces to talk to administration and say, this is really going to impact our students. What are we going to do for these students who cannot meet this requirement or this university goal? So I think that's a big part of it. But I think the other thing is students need a clearer understanding of the policy or requirement that they are having challenges with, and learning how to navigate through that. Most of the time, I feel that once a student has a clearer understanding of the policy or requirement they're experiencing challenges with, that they become aware of the options of how to complete that requirement or how to petition for an exception to a policy. That's one thing I always like to remind students who feel like there's no way around it. I said, yes, there are rules and we got to follow their rules, but there's also, you can ask for an exception. And these are the ways of doing it. And that's really important, to finding that connection, that's either it's an advisor or your department that'll work with you and show you, basically learning the hidden curriculum, show you how to petition for an exception, to show you, hey, you can do this as a reduced fee student, which means doing it part-time because you're a parenting student. So I think that there are ways around it once the student understands, and once they understand that, they can start building a plan. And once they develop that plan to move forward, then it's up to them whether they're going to follow that pathway or not.
Yeah, thank you, Vivian. I think I just want to underscore, it's okay to petition. Some of us might come from families, communities where it's like, no, you shouldn't ask for the exception. That's not okay. There's something wrong. No, I want to underscore, ask for the exception, work with someone to help you make the strongest case possible. Go see those people who can help you put that together. Yeah.
Absolutely.
I'm trying to also navigate my new setup here and keep an eye on the clock. But I'm curious if I could ask, Vivian, LT, Nicole, one, you don't all have to respond, but one question for y'all before I transition to our amazing alumni panelists, Anthony and AR. Do you think, because you all have worked in different parts of campus at different times at UCLA, and now, LT, you advise campuses, how someone's asking us live in our Q&A, how receptive do you think UCLA is as a whole to students extending their time in their respective programs to help prevent stop out? Like some of the things I think you all have hinted at, going part-time, taking a planned leave with a plan to come back, really taking care of your mental health so that you can return at a different point in time. Do you all think from where you sit that our campus is receptive to that? Or there's options for that?
Absolutely. And I say that because I sit on a committee that reviews these exceptions. But it's a matter of how you lay out that request. I do think that particularly if you are someone that has been away from the university 5+ years, we did not have the time to degree rule. So there's definitely much more flexibility because you've been away, depending how long you've been away and what you've been doing in between. So yeah, most definitely there is ways. Our goal is to get our students to graduate. That's what makes UCLA number one, right? Increasing that retention rate, making sure that they're graduating. So we will definitely find a pathway that fits your circumstance, your experience, for you to be able to complete that degree.
I think what I'll just add to that, in addition to that, just the framework of the policy around it, I'll say that I see the university really wrestling with, especially post-COVID now, with remote and flexibility and recording things and these approaches going toward universal design, and the conversation beginning to happen around that, when universal design meaning people don't have to ask for accommodations, they're just sort of embedded in the way that we do teaching and learning. Now it's in the beginning, I'll say, but I think that adds to the conversation around the recognition not everybody can do this the same way and at the same pace and has the same circumstances. So I've seen more and more that initially it was, if the student asks, we can accommodate, and moving toward just nudging toward understanding that the landscape has changed a lot. And there are many professors who on their own record things, make things remote, have asynchronous opportunities, which because even if you get back in, how many classes, what you need to do, you still have to make it work with your life. And I think the difference between those who can continue to persist is they've kind of not just looked at what they need to do, but, where did I get in trouble before? Because I think sometimes I just want to close the book. I feel shame and I don't want to touch that anymore. But if you can look at it and investigate and ask for what you need, but I think we're starting to begin to just offer it, and trust that process.
I'll just chime in really quickly. I think one of the issues that I see on a global level is a lot of the onus is put on the student. So like Nicole was saying, if the student asks, oh, all these resources are here, but a lot of people don't know that they can ask, right? And so I think that's a critical point there, that we need to call people up and say, hey, Anthony, are you interested in coming back, rather than waiting for Anthony to arrive at that all on his own. So one of the things we're working on is, and at ReUp, is helping institutions identify those students and actually contact them to see if they're ready at a place, like Vivian said, to come back, and then coach them back.
Thank you. Thank you, LT. Thank you all. I'd love to transition to you, Anthony. I'll start with you and then transition to AR as well. But I think the question really, I think people will benefit a lot from just hearing from y'all as people who did this. Like, you started, you stopped out, you came back, and you graduated. Like, you're our proud alumni. So shout out to both of you. First of all, let's start there. But I'm curious if both of you could share a little bit about, starting with you, Anthony, but to your level of comfort, why you stopped out, why you left UCLA, and what helped you to return?
Shout out to me for doing that. I think that what Nicole said really resonated with my experience. It really started with the trip. I don't think that there was a single after my freshman year, there wasn't a single year that I wasn't in CAPS for to address something. And usually I left it at, I scheduled that first appointment, had a talk with someone, so therefore I'm in the right direction, right? And I think that it just got to the point where, when I started working for Residential Life, I had access to healthcare and was able to talk to someone outside of the university, kind of beyond the context of who I was as a student. I was able to address more personal things to me. And that led me to think, I really need to take care of myself first, because I'm not I don't think that I'm in a position to finish this right now. So some time passed. I felt my self-esteem really come up. I felt better equipped to handle my emotions before they got overwhelming. And I think that just made the timing perfect for me to come back.
Thank you, Anthony. And thank you to your furry friend who's chiming in with love. Can I, AR, what was maybe some of the circumstances for you in terms of taking some time away?
Well, I think, Nicole, you really made me think when you were talking earlier. And a lot of it was when I remember at orientation, people pulled me aside and they said, you have this, being of Filipinx descent, there was spear, there was so many things that were there to help me. But they said, hey, you're not going to need this, you're going to be fine. So when I wasn't fine and I didn't feel like I fit in, I was like, why am I wrong? Why, that's there, but I was told that I don't need that. Or when I would go ask for help, I didn't have the right words and so forth. And part of it really was we want to be an HSI, right? And we're moving towards that. But in terms of diversity, at the time when I first started, it was the late 80s, early 90s. And a lot of my friends were like, well, if you could just be a little more like us, and it was coded, right? Or if you were different, I could date you. Or what about this guy? He's also Filipino, and look at what he did to change himself so he could fit in with our group, to be in their fraternity or their club or so forth. And sometimes I can be a little more outspoken than that. And what I found out was I was marginalized. And I think that's a big thing that, right, working with marginalized communities, right, we're also a group of marginalized students, right, when we have left. And so in the meantime, I left. I was trying to pursue entertainment. I wanted to do that anyway, and it was the excuse. Well, I'm not fitting in here anyway. I went from academic probation to subject to dismissal. So I just said, okay, well, this is the time to go anyway. I'll come back next quarter. And it became the next quarter. So to make money and make ends meet, I became a private college counselor and a tutor and an SAT tutor when the SATs were really important. And then I'd have a lot of students who were first gen or going to be first gen ask me, so AR, when did you finish at UCLA? And then I had to be like, okay, well, you see what happened was, and I just kept on doing that, and then I got sick. I got sick enough that the doctor told me if I didn't listen to him, I'd be dead in 12 to 24 hours. So I had to get surgery. And as I was wheeled into the operating room, my brother stopped the gurney and stopped the staff, and he leaned over and he said, "You've still got work to do," alluding to the work that I do with students. And then he said 3 UCLA words. He said, "Fight, fight, fight." So then I knew I had a mission. I had to get back. But the thing is, for all y'all who are considering doing this, I understand how hard it was, or how hard it is. I was like, okay, I need to do this, but how do I do it? I'm not ready to go back to UCLA right away. And I found somebody back at UCLA who was an honors counselor, my brother's honors counselor, and she was like, when you're ready, come and talk to me, but get out of here. Let's go to lunch. We're not going to talk about school until you're ready. And I didn't know when I was ready. I went to the local community college and started taking classes. And my classmates were like, what are you doing here? You're way too, like, a lot of them were first gens who were even older than I was trying to navigate school. And they're like, you're helping us pass all these classes. You should be fine going back to college or to a 4-year school. And it doesn't have to be, my local school would have been Cal State Dominguez. And I'm like, okay, so then I'll look back at UCLA. So through that, I took summer school at UCLA and met some people. And yes, there were definitely people who didn't understand. And like, so it's not going to be completely easy to you all, but I found groups of students who were there. And then they,
Did AR freeze or did I freeze? AR froze. It's all good. It's all good. Technical difficulties tonight are real. It's all good. I think where AR was going is exactly where he's anticipating my very next question, just around what helped you to return. I think you're back with us, AR. I think you're back. You did freeze for just a second.
okay.
You want to finish your thought?
Yeah. So needless to say, I got back, and when I got back to school, I was in a class, and she's now a PhD, Tracy Buenavista, said there's a scholarship that you should apply for. You're helping kids, and I think you'd be really good because you're going to be an educator. And I said, okay, I'll take a look at it. So we talked after class, and I said, when I'll think about it and so forth. She said, no, it's due tomorrow. So I had to do the application overnight, and I realized halfway through the application that I needed 2 letters of rec in 12 hours. So for those of you who are looking for letters of rec, one thing that I learned in the process of going to grad school later, when you look for people to write your letters of rec, make sure you ask them if they can write you a strong letter of rec, rather than like, well, can you do this for me? Because sometimes that can be a huge difference maker. And then I met LT, and what was supposed to be a 15-minute interview ended up me sitting in the office with her and Hector Camenyan for 45 minutes to an hour. And it really is finding allies and finding your family, right? And I didn't know anything about AAP until I sat in the office. I didn't know anything about anything except for, they asked me what's my research. I just wanted to get back into school. My research is finding out how to do the bachelor's. But I found allies who were there to do that for me. And step by step, it was, I don't want to say it was ever easy, but it was a lot of fun. And it still is a lot of fun seeing like familiar faces and so forth. And that now people that I do consider family, I know that if I was up in the Bay, I could call LT and say, hey, when do you have a minute? And so forth. And if wherever I am, she can always ask me. So
100%. I appreciate, I think, AR, what you've done is really give such a beautiful example of it's a process, that it takes different interventions, different opportunities, different moments of support for this to happen, just like it takes multiple points of support and intervention for any student to graduate. And so I'm curious, Anthony, what helped you to come back? What were some of the key supports for you to come back to UCLA?
What didn't help? I think everyone was helpful. So from the time that AR came back and the time that I came back, I think really speaks to something that this panel has been really getting to, is that the resources at UCLA is evolving. The way that we're looking at how we can best serve students is evolving. And I just remember first reaching out to someone from AAP. I think her name is Michelle Alexander. And then she directed me to my department counselor, Janelle Munguia. And it was really simple. They were just like, you want to come to class? I got a chair for you right here. Just fill out these forms and we'll get you in there. So it was just a surprise to me how simple it was to get back. And I think what they really did well was, leave the judgments that I imposed on myself at the door, and just kind of dealt with the facts. Here's someone who wants to come back. Let's let him go back and see what happens. And then I graduated.
I really appreciate that, Anthony, because I know there's so much more behind that, but it's some of the internal work that you were doing, and also similar to AR, it's the people who are saying, who see you and say, we see you, we got you. When you're ready, here's the steps. We can walk down those steps with you. I love the image of, we got a chair for you, like come back to class. So I want to mix it up again because we're getting such great questions in the chat that I know I'm going a little off script, but y'all are so brilliant. I know you're flowing with me. So I'm curious if, and I think this could be any of you all, how would, if you think AR, Anthony, about your experiences, and then, Nicole, LT, Vivian, thinking from a staff advisory kind of point of view, how would someone who stopped out know about resources? Even like today's webinar, like I can tell that person, we sent this far and wide, and we're hoping your community told you to join. But how would someone know? How would someone know I got to start with AAP? How can we help that transition?
I think they first need to identify, are they an AAP student? I gave some links to some websites that students can connect to, find out how they can connect. UCLA now has this wonderful system of the message center that you can connect with almost any department, send them a message just like you would an email, ask for an appointment, or ask when you're drop-in hours. There's different ways that we're connecting with students both in person and remotely. So identifying, what advising unit are you in the College of Letter Science? Are you in nursing, engineering? You need to connect with the appropriate department so that you can find that information.
Yeah.
I think one thing I'll add, and what sounds really important to the story is AR and Anthony's story, is like that peer support, like someone saying, you can do this. Someone saying, we got a chair. Someone saying, hey, you need to come over here. I think if you don't yet have that, the good news about the internet is that there's Instagram and this and TikToks and all the things that just, even if you have to watch all the YouTubes about people going back to college to get yourself pumped up and hyped up until you can really make that first connection or tell the truth that I wasn't able to finish college and I'm ready to go back. I think there's no shame in readying yourself psychologically for that. And, luckily reaching out to various communities that you were potentially connected to before you left. And if you weren't connected to communities, there's so many communities now online and online forums and things like that. You don't have to start necessarily with UCLA. You can kind of tiptoe your way back and just kind of peruse. If there's no harm in letting yourself think the thought. And I think that's what I just want to say. I think people think if I think the thought and I have to say it out loud, you don't. You can just keep thinking the thought. And touching it and leaning into it and then looking on the internet and then moving toward, it doesn't have to be the big leap to let me call UCLA, which sometimes can be too much of a leap.
100%. I'm curious, this is another logistical question, but even I think you're hinting at this, Anthony and AR, did you need to reapply? Can you just re-enroll in classes? Can you just sit down with an academic advisor and say, I'm ready to re-enroll? I'm curious if y'all could share a little bit about that. And then certainly I know Vivian, from a practical policy standpoint, you could chime in too, but I'd love to hear from our alumni. Like, can you just re-enroll?
Yeah, it was as simple as just walking into class. Something that was really easy was that, they explained to me it's not a competitive scene to get back into class. You're already a Bruin. So whenever you're ready, come on back.
Thank you, Anthony. Thank you, Anthony. Did you want to chime in, AR?
Yeah, so for me, it was actually a little different because I had left STD, subject to dismissal. And then when I left, and I had classes that were incomplete that went from incomplete withdrawal to just fails. And the honors counselor, who really became like a big sister to my brother and I, Lavelle Sevilla, she talked to me, and when she talked to me, it was tough love. People call her loving, but it was tough love because, and in academia, you're not supposed to do this. She would tell my brother, leave the room, close the door on your way out. And she would talk to me. But I needed that. I needed somebody who would give me that straight, this is what you need to do. And she would give me the form and say, go find these professors. They're still here from when you were here 15 years ago. You need to get them to sign off and take back those incomplete withdrawals, right? And the turn to fails. Like, we just have to get them off your record, or you have to go and say, what do I have to do to get this work done? And then I'm sitting there in her office, and I'm like, oh, but I parking's about to run out, I better go. And she's like, no, go do it now. Here's some quarters, right? Because she was in Murphy, so I would just drop quarters and she's like, go and do it now. And I'd have to look for office hours. And so it wasn't an easy walk. But the thing is, she knew that I was committed when I was ready to do all that. So even if it's not as easy to just walk back into class, which, Anthony, that is so great that you were able to do that. But it is worth it when it's the right time for you. But she said to me many times when I sat in her office, until you're ready, let's not even talk about it. But when she felt that I was ready, then the people will be there for you. And if they're not, then come and talk to one of us, and we'll help you find the people.
We'll help you find the people. Yeah, I want to underscore that. I think LT's putting it in the chat too. It takes a community. We don't arrive here without community. We don't sustain or graduate without communities. Coming back's the same. The people are here. Yeah. Did you want to add anything to that, Vivian?
Yes, it's true what Anthony said. It's not a competitive process, but how long it takes or how much you have to do depends on academically how you left. If you left in good standing, your overall GPA 2.0, your last quarter GPA 2.0, you just need to fill out an application, a readmission application, pretty simple, fill it out, and you're ready to and figure out what your next step is in terms of enrolling. If you leave in academic difficulty, then the process is a little bit different, and you may have to do academic coursework before returning. You may have to write maybe a letter of appeal explaining your circumstances, what the challenges you have, where you at now, why you're ready to return. So we evaluate the student's readiness based on, for example, a letter of appeal. So if your academics weren't so strong, then we'll take a look at, how do we clean this up? What do you need to do for the next step to move forward?
And I just want to underscore something you're saying, Vivian, that I happen to know helping students. That readmission application is not like when you apply to UCLA the first time. It's not this extensive, scary, overwhelming process. It is a one-page form. Yes, Vivian, there is a small fee, literally a small fee to just submit that form to the registrar.
If you're an AP student, we waive that fee.
And if you are an AAP student, that fee is waived. My knowledge, the last time I checked, but I haven't been in my previous office for a while, it was $75. $75. And if you're not AAP, and if you are, they will waive that fee.
Yes.
And if you want to know if you're an AAP student, email Vivian. No, or you can email someone in the message center. You can email an academic advisor in the message center to confirm whether or not you qualify for AAP. And if you were never an AAP student, but you qualified, you can always go and get support from AAP.
Absolutely, Denise. Thank you for that.
We're quickly nearing the end of the hour. Time is flying. It's so great to be with you all. I wanted to do a couple more quick things that have come up in the Q&A. Folks are so thoughtful with their incredible questions tonight. One of them is an easy one. What does CAPS stand for? CAPS is our Counseling and Psychological Services Center. It's like our counseling center, supporting mental health, wellness, and resilience. So that's an easy one. Nicole, someone is asking a really interesting question. I hope you'll comment on. Are there case managers for people who are out of the campus and out of the system and want to re-engage? Like, is there advice or maybe suggestions?
We don't typically serve the students who are not currently enrolled, but it doesn't mean that we can't help to figure out resources. So the easiest start is either there's a Students in Crisis website. You can peruse that page and put in a referral, because at the most we will reach out to you and point you in the right directions. You can also call CAPS, the Counseling Center. We have a 24-hour crisis line, and we can provide resources, community resources where there are community case managers, and just use our network to support. So don't be afraid to still reach out to us if you're not a current student, because we can try to figure out where you might fit and what your needs might be and how to support you still, just by, you know, making those connections and referrals, which is half the battle, is just finding what's available.
I so appreciate you mentioning those things, Nicole, and just want to underscore and highlight, because I would be that person that's, well, I am that person that's a little anxious and want more info. So if I called the 24-hour CAPS line and I say I'm not a current student, they're not going to hang up on me. They're not going to
during,
say,
let me, that's a great question. In the evening hours, it's just for students. But if you call during normal business hours, 8 to 5, Monday through Friday, and just or 9 to 5, really Monday through Friday, and talk to someone and say, I'm a former student, I'm looking for referrals, our daytime staff will definitely help you. So after hours, it becomes a crisis line that's specifically for students, but during the day, you can ask to speak to a clinical coordinator and they will get you connected with community resources or try to triage what you need and pinpoint you in the right direction.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Also on that student crisis form, you can refer yourself. You don't need someone to refer you. I can refer myself. Call during your lunch break. I want to echo that. Nicole, LT, call. Thank you. Nicole is putting the 24-hour CAPS line, which is the normal line during business hours, in the chat. One last question for everybody. So what advice you got, you know, one last piece of advice you would give for anybody that is thinking about coming back, is struggling, trying to support someone who's coming back? One quick fire round before we bring a couple more people into the combo for one last announcement. Any final advice you'd give or recommendations?
The help is there. It's easier to access than you think.
And if and when you get a no or a, oh, let's think about it, or you may want to think about something else, then just find somebody else, because somebody else will answer. And that's the hard thing, because there were so many people who were like, oh, well, yeah, there's a reason why you dropped out, right? And I didn't even like that word, right? I was the black sheep of the family because I had dropped out of college. But I found people. I found my LT. I found my late counselor Lavelle. I found others too. And through all it really does take a village. So find your village. And if a villager doesn't want to help you, then find another villager.
I think my advice is really let yourself off the hook if you're struggling with any shame or blame around it. This happens to a lot of people. You did as best you could at the time you had with the resources you knew, and let yourself off the hook so that you can feel like you deserve to be here. And UCLA will benefit from your brilliance. So I would say let yourself off the hook and move forward.
Yeah, I would say I would agree. Take that chance, make a connection. If they don't offer information or you don't understand, find somebody else. Keep going, because eventually you'll connect with somebody that will hear you out, will understand, or something will resonate with something you heard, and just keep moving forward.
I don't have anything else to add. Be kind to yourself. You deserve it.
I just want to add, UCLA did not make a mistake when you were admitted. They did not make a mistake. And we're always here. I just want to underscore that. I want to thank you all. I'm not ending just yet, but I just want to really uplift. Thank you all for your brilliance, your insight, your compassion, your wisdom. It's so wonderful to know you and get to work with you. And so thank you for your time this evening. Before we close, I wanted to ask one of our representatives from our AAP Alumni Network, one of our newest networks. Yes, please stay on, panelists. We just want to invite Derek from our AAP Alumni Network board to come on and join us and just share a little bit about AAP Alumni Network. Can I get involved if I haven't finished my degree, Derek? Like, can I join and be connected and build community with you all? I'm just curious.
Absolutely, 100%. You know, we're super excited to actually be an official alumni network. We're about a year old now. We're officially registered with the UCLA Alumni Association. So like the folks said, UCLA continues to evolve and the resources just continue to expand and include folks. We're here as a resource every step of the way. I mean, it's beautiful to see that the AAP is with students start in the middle through stopbacks and after you graduate. You can absolutely get involved. We've got 2 committees that we've actually officially launched. One's a networking committee and one's a mentoring committee. So if you just want to connect with some of our 48,000 UCLA AAP alumni, we can get you dialed in through events, fireside chats. For mentoring, if you want to get matched with somebody, like somebody for part of your tribe, your village, to help you, to find guidance, like they said, to help you find the people, we can help you find somebody in the AAP Alumni Network. And I'll drop our social media. We've got a LinkedIn page, we've got an Instagram and our website. So that's where we'll post our events. So, we definitely would love to see some of y'all out there. And this has been great to see. I can definitely echo and from myself and my friends, like Ms. Salazar helped me back in the day with calculus class and accounting class to get through. I have a friend now, I'm actually in Deneb now. Today, I have a friend who's leaving for Harvard Business School. He's UCLA AAP alumni. He dropped out of economics class or economics major. He was denied we were just talking about this like a few hours ago. He was denied communications major, denied international development studies major, finally graduated with poli-sci, went to work at Nike, and now he's off to Harvard Business School in the fall. So, there's definitely, AAP is an incredible resource and do what they say and it can end well for you.
Every no takes you closer to a yes. Yeah, get to the yes, get to the yes, get to the yes. Thank you so much, Derek. Thank you again, everyone. We're perfect and right on time. I just want to thank everyone who joined us tonight. We had a great, consistent audience from what I can see. We're so happy to be here. If we can help you in any way, please reach out to the diversity email where you could send your Q&A. We're happy to connect you with any of the resources that folks have mentioned today. And please, we're here for you. We care about you. Thank you. Thank you.